Hello, everybody, and welcome to Oxrex Temple of Ages, Part 11. This one's going to be all over the place, yet it's kind of amazing how everything's starting to fold back in on itself, and it's funny as I keep putting these slides together, and I made the first 6, and then I made 7 more, and now I think we're on another 3 past that, and I've been going back into my old presentation so I can kind of, I don't want to say recycle, yet a lot of these times I reference back these shows I talked about in further depth in the original episodes, and I keep thinking to myself, why don't I go back and grab more pictures so I can put more context to things I've already talked about so I can really quickly go through them again, and it's even more of a refresher and for people that are new here. Because I have a feeling not everyone's going to watch every single video, and there'll be new people here. Hey, new people. And they'll be wondering, like, James, what the heck are you talking about? Because I at least try to give a little summation about what each topic is while I'm going over them, so that you can hopefully research it on your own if you have any interest or synchronicity with it. So if you go back to a topic, you should be able to at least get a name for it. And if there isn't, please just put a timestamp in the comments, and I'll let you know what the show is, and so you can kind of research it and kind of disseminate the information for yourself, because I encourage everyone to do that and not believe what I say at face value, to kind of follow the information and where it leads and kind of make up your mind as you go. And it seems kind of funny that this reality itself, every time I think I have it kind of figured out or it's all kind of going together, there's something new that's thrown into the equation or something I've forgotten, because a lot of it's just the same repeating information, but it's easy to forget what happened a few days ago even, so it's kind of nice to have a refresher like I was saying. So this episode is going to be very interesting, that it'll have a very fresh, updated take on current events, as well as going over a lot of things we've been talking about as we kind of prepare. I would call it the last run. I'm not going to finish it, but surprisingly enough, after these next few videos, I'll have talked about most of the information I have had to talk about. And past now, it'll be more about folding in current events to say, oh, hey, it's going towards what I was talking about this entire time. And more focusing on the real life solutions, because the idea and kind of more I'll get to at the end, and how I've talked about in videos like the Arc Rex one I made a few ago, that it's about the standard of living and day-to-day experiences moving forward, and not so much just talking about all this information that we've been going over. I think it'll be both, but I like to have that balance, and as things get weirder, it would be nice to have some stability in that as well. So I wanted to start with this meme that every decision in your life has led you to seeing this picture of a chicken. And we've been talking so much about chickens and reality generation, and that, we're meant to be here in this spot in space and time, even if it just seems so weird and joke-like. And that how we can add on to that as well. And I kind of want to do a brief look at how imagination and memes reverberate through reality. That there's this ancient mask that was correlated with human sacrifice and mocking people, and here's this person saying they just altered their DNA and they're happy that they believe in science while they're making the same face that this mask is making. And I also wanted to make a point here that science is here so you don't have to believe it. That if someone jumps off a cliff, you don't have to believe that someone jumped off a cliff, because you saw it happen in the effects of it, and you can measure it, you can get the velocity and the acceleration, and you can take down all these measurements to prove to everyone else repeatedly that this exists the way you say it does. So belief does not enter the picture, yet modern science with so many people is belief. They've folded it right into a religion. It's nothing new, but I just kind of wanted to make a little side tangent. And adding on top of this, someone did a face app morph of all senators on both sides of the aisle. And it's just interesting that the one on the left just reminded me of this mask so much, that a lot of these people, like, when they're smiling, they look really creepy. Kind of like, almost like their spirit's bleeding out. And I kind of wanted to go back because I kind of talked about it, but I wanted to add more on the fact of these chosen ones portrayed in media. Because in the media, their stories work out and it's a moral ending and all that. Yet in real life, we just see example after example that these people kind of gave away their sovereignty and self-control so that they could become another brick in the wall. Really fancy brick in the wall, yet they're kind of giving up that generative natural force to become one with the system. And there's a lot of speculation and talk about how they also have to be humiliated. And I think that's why a lot of these actors with these archetypes kind of have to do this. And especially if it's about awakening, or with these two actors being chosen ones, becoming bigger than the story you're in and changing it from good to bad. And that is kind of the inverse in our real life. And that's just very interesting. And that I found this meme right here that the guy in charge of the FBI writes a fan fiction of himself as a medieval knight saving the king. So these people not only want to subvert everyone and give away their generative force, they still want to see themselves as the good guy, even though it seems more and more that they're not the good guy. And this exact same person that wrote that book is in this list of news articles right here, and how on that big day when there was that giant fake protest at the Capitol, that it turns out that almost 300 of them were undercover agents. And a few episodes ago, I was going so much into honeypots and how almost all of this is just fake, that they're just looking for innocent, real people to put the blame on in these stupid little manufactured stunts they keep making. And this meme just illustrates that it seems like they have nothing better to do than just try to find disgruntled people. And I'm not saying they're making the right decisions. It's just that they're dangling these opportunities in front of people's faces, kind of like a salesman comes to your door and is like, "Hey, do you want this honeypot?" And you're like, okay, maybe. And then knock, knock, you're the villain now, have fun in jail. And it's just, I find it just so egregious and evil because it's focusing on the most susceptible and vulnerable of our society. And they're being told, hey, this is the right way to do it, or here's a way to do it. And they just get caught up on it. And it turns out everyone else a part of that system was fake. And they were just trying to find someone real dependent on. And I kind of want to take this to more mainstream stuff. It's going to be interesting to describe this. So basically, this is a joke about this interview where they're talking about this well-known intelligence agency. And she's saying that it's shrouded in secrecy and there's all this propaganda and conspiracy around it. And this ends up being kind of like a puff piece. And there's this comedian named Tim Dillon that I've been watching lately because I see him as one of the main disclosers right now of information. And he's just getting so much on the money lately that, and it makes me laugh as well. There's not many comedians that make me do that, but it's just kind of shocking like how far we're moving along the road to disclosure and how he keeps bringing these things up. And I didn't put a slide in here, but he made a point recently that the people that are putting out the propaganda aren't really trying to lie anymore. Like, they're not even putting in the effort to lie to us anymore. And that should be something you take notice of because it's a shift in the cycle of disclosure and about as close as you can get to these things actually happening or being on the stage as a public thing. So he's making this joke right here about ice cream because the lady was saying like, oh, people that might not know about this intelligence agency, like, we're obviously not a part of it or know anything about it, but just like, what's this all about? So he finds a person from an ice cream store, and he's talking like he's never had ice cream before. So he's like, what is this ice cream? And then later, he's eating the ice cream while he's pretending he's not. Like, what is this ice creamy? Like, nom, nom, nom. To make that point that these people are involved in these intelligence agencies and these secrets and are actively trying to pre-program us with propaganda, but act like they don't know what's happening. And you can see that almost anywhere, mainstream-wise, that they're like, why is this happening? This doesn't make sense. And it's like, yeah, it does. They're just sugarcoating it because they don't want them to be portrayed as the bad guys or as evil as they are. And that kind of brings us into this story he's talking about Palantir and how they're trying to rebrand themselves not to be evil and how that's a big thing. And the thing they're working on right now is wearables. And that Palantir is named after the item in Lord of the Rings that the Eye of Sauron or anyone else could use to spy on it. So if you used a Palantir, anyone else that has a Palantir can see what you're doing. A lot like the internet. And it's just interesting that the thing they're making right now is these mood rings that are connected to their network so that every soldier or person that wears this ring, they can measure their biometrics and everything about them, a lot like the Eye of Sauron can, or the Palantirs. And that the person that owns this company is having a 4-part lecture on the Antichrist right now. And one of the episodes, actually, he hosted today. And they're going to do their final one in about a week. So it's just like, imagine the odds of that. And how they're trying to turn this lifestyle into an acceptable, commonplace thing. Because they have to get people to go along with being surveilled even more than they are. Like, not just having the phone, but something that's even more wearable and on your person at all times, monitoring what you're doing so that they know where you are. And that they're trying to brand living in a digital prison as a good thing because that's what their goal is. And that's also kind of back to the pre-programming. Like, this is very blunt. And they're kind of hiding it under the guise of comedy. And it does make me laugh, yet the being a part of this joke or having this joke on you is not what people might want as average. And in fact, that person that is the owner of that company was saying if you try to stop him from making this technology and distributing it, you're Satan. You're the evil one. So you're evil for trying to stop him from doing what he wants, which implies it's good. So evil's seeing itself as good and branding it as good and shoving it down everyone's throats. Kind of back to the idea I made last episode of trying to make it like animated characters or school children or the most innocent thing they could imagine so they can hide behind it and you might not notice what it actually is, or at least tone it down a few notches. And not only that, he's with the biggest public conspiracy disclosure I can name, Alex Jones, and he just made this episode a few weeks ago how they're talking about how the biggest person they've been talking about lately that abuses vulnerable people and how everyone in the government's kind of related to it belong to the intelligence agencies. So all these horrible things that are happening, they're disclosing that it happened because of these intelligence agencies that also keep trying to honeypot everyone and make them the villain. It's just so interesting how that dichotomy works. And I just wanted to make a quick note that the reason I'm making this podcast or presentation right now is because of this episode right here on the Joe Rogan Experience. That I came home from work one day and sat down and watched this, and I haven't really been able to put down the topics they discussed in this. And a lot of the things we're talking about, they were talking about in this podcast, about this interdimensional artificial being that's trying to trap us in its artificial reality, a lot like the Matrix. And I've just been kind of building upon that ever since. And how it's related to 9/11 and Sirius, right back to that. The Truman Show. I love putting this meme as much as I can into presentations. And like in the last presentation, I said it even led to another fourth wall breaking instance that I'll go over later in this presentation. And last episode, I was talking about this is our version of the Truman Show. This person named Chris, or Chris Chan. And they had this medallion or idol of an egregore they made in their mind that's about merging the dimensions. And that they broke this medallion and that they're trying to reforge it into something else. And I didn't really look this up, to see if it was real or not. Just the symbolism itself and what it's related to all this is just kind of reverberating with me, so I wanted to just use it and say it. And this meme right here, Overlords apologize. We'll reset simulation to 2015. We just wanted to see what you would do. You know, this fourth wall breaking, observing effect, simulation, dream, reality test that we all seem to be in. And how self-aware it's becoming. And this is going to be a tangent. Like, where I'm going to go talking about this ad I saw in the store. I think I saw this a day right around when I made the last presentation. I think I took a picture of it, but I didn't really have time to put it in the presentation itself. And the last week, this just exploded with all these synchronicities and all these different ad placements I saw. And we're going to go through them, and I'm going to kind of list them out first and then go over a bunch of mainstream pre-programming and archetypes and things like that, and then bring it back to the ads so it really can hit home instead of just trying to put a few little labels on it. So they related to worms right here, Mountain Dew. And last episode I was talking about blue plasma mountains and how it's related to the chosen one and remaking reality and living forever or being reborn. And that's the main symbol on the never-ending story right there on the left with the Kundalini blue plasma dragon with the moon behind it rising out of this mountain. And that has the ability to change the story of reality itself. And back to the Avengers in the Marvel Universe, that this tesseract of blue plasma can open up the dimensions between worlds. And it's in many, many, many movies as well, this blue plasma being shooting up into the sky. And it was in the Transformers movie I talked about as well in the last episode. And how it houses all this consciousness of all these previous heroes, and you can join into it as well. And there's the negative version as well, and how it can heal and bring people back to life and bring their soul alive and even imagination itself to life, potentially. And bring this whole new world and light up the mind of God all at once. And how it has to do with this plasma and mountain symbolism, that we can think of the mountain as our world or closed system, and it brings back all this life and energy and vitality. And you can think of the Bible, how they lived 1,000 years, and it might have been because of this energy that was just radiating in their world and gave way to things like magic. And now we have to use technology and things like that to replicate it and let us live longer. And back to that idea of making your imagination come to life with energy itself, usually represented by blue energy, and that this can give people superpowers as well, or what we perceive as superpowers, but that's just your imagination coming to life. You know, you want to lift something really heavy that you don't think you can, that's your imagination coming to life. And how we were talking with that with The Dead Don't Die, that this plasma was bringing zombies back to life from the heavens. And that if you look in mainstream, that they use cold plasma for wound healing and other things as well. So it can be used to heal, and that's probably why it brings the dead back to life, or technology to life. And that there's a lot of mention to the land of milk and honey. And that the idea is that plasma can potentially have residue, so that or a mountain of dew that you yourself can eat. And you could relate this to the lambus bread in Lord of the Rings that the elves had, that they eat it and it can fill up the man of a grown stomach enough for a day. That this food keeps you full, and that's kind of the idea of land and milk and honey, that they could just live not only off this small amount of food, but that was naturally reoccurring in the land itself, and that allows you to live really long. That's related to elves, and also expanding your mind and being really smart. And there's kind of this conspiracy with the old world and Tartaria and all that, that there's these buildings that, or pictures of these old buildings that didn't have toilets. And it just kind of makes me think of this idea, if you're not a consumer and you're not eating all this food all the time, and that energy itself, or the byproducts of energy itself, are keeping you alive instead, you don't really need to defecate or do nearly as much. So it doesn't have to be so built into our world. and how some castles don't have toilets and things like that. And I'm not going to die on this hill. It's just something I want to kind of mention if we're talking about living off, the residue of plasma or byproducts or things that would seem like milk or honey. And that the idea of this blue plasma mountain is related back to Walt Disney and Imagination Land and all that, and this castle that has this blue light over it, or the Aurora Borealis that I've been talking about, that can bring your very imagination to life, and how there's jobs at Walt Disney called Imagineering. And that's just, it's almost like fourth wall breaking in the kind of presentation we're talking about with these topics, and bringing imagination to life, and how it starts with just pen and pencil or paper, and then keeps evolving past that, especially now as we blend it with technology. And they had this, I believe this was a Tomorrowland in France, that has all these blue lights shooting up into the sky where this castle is, and all these lights going off. And it's kind of an homage to, well, this movie is an homage to the Tomorrowland in Disney World. Yet imagine a place where anything is possible. So this Tomorrowland, even though it's just kind of a set or a prop in our world, or just a thought, is actually real in the future, and is this paradise wonderland utopia. And it's linked from the past to the future as well. So kind of all these themes kind of come back in on each other, in imagination coming to life, and how Disney has the secret club. Like, there's a lot of, and you can see the little egg right there by the 33. So, what secrets are they really hiding? And it'd be a good place. And how sharing is caring. So they didn't share Tomorrowland. They didn't share the utopia. They didn't share the technology. They didn't share all the nice things. They were just kind of letting the people in the past suffer in all the chaos. And that's kind of what the main character did, was bridge the timelines and fix it kind of like Back to the Future. And, yeah, it's just amazing how sharing comes back to all this. So this ad right here is just amazing how deep this one's going to go. It has to do with Fanta's Halloween ad this year. And they're back, and they want a Fanta. So, and grab a Fanta before they do, with this devil popping out of the wall in a fourth wall breaking way. So this brings me to the idea, or the meme, is this just real life, or is this just a fantasy? The lyrics of the Prince? I don't think it, no, it's not Prince. Someone's going to get mad about that. Whatever Bohemian Rhapsody, it's in that. Yet, if you relate it back to the play on words of a sea of orange Fanta, the soda, and how this related to, are we in a dream, a simulation? Like, what is this? And I briefly wanted to go back and talk about this show Evangelion from Japan, which is about resetting humanity, and how they have all these giants that are related to technology and being in the mind of God, and that there are these secret organizations that are trying to basically force biblical prophecy to have humanity join as a hive mind organism. And that this is run by transhumanists. Sorry, there's just so much going on with these pictures. It's kind of hard to pick where to start. And that they have this ritual that's related to the Tree of Life, or the Sephiroth, or Kabbalah, and the eclipse. And that everybody turns into their soul, and it's all merged together. And you can stop it right here and really read about this, but the symbolism goes really deep in this show. And everyone turns into Fantas, or Orange Tang. And they're formed into a sea, or one hive mind, and the chosen one gets to choose whether or not everyone gets to make their own world or fantasy, or they have to live in his world. So, he gets to choose it. And how, once again, it's relating it back to the idea of the mind of God. Like, what if you could choose what the mind of God was thinking about? And that you would bring along the souls of everyone along into that new world, or they would have their choice to do that as well. And back to that symbolism as well, or Neo taking control of the Matrix. And this is was also the ending of Devilman Crybaby, more or less, that the world was reset with this orange sea after humanity itself was reset as well, and having to do with all this angelic prophecy. And in the beginning of the show, in the intro, there's this lyric about a young boy rising into the heavens as a legend, or a nobody once again becoming a somebody, and gaining this generative force to change the story of the world for better or worse, or whatever their desire may be. And once again, we take this back to Marvel and Loki, the trickster god that becomes the god of storytelling, and how he gets this magical tesseract that allows him to bridge time and space, and how it's related to CERN and has the 8 points as well. And he uses it to bridge the dimension so aliens can invade, so he can take over the world. So he kind of originally takes the dark path there. Yet after that, there's a show where he becomes the hero. He goes from being the villain to the hero, and how he becomes the new mind of God and changes the timeline. So all these branches right here are on the same tree, yet they specifically cut off the branches and form it into a central timeline. And this timeline is made up of plasma right here, and it has all the memories of everyone. So it's like the Akashic Records playing everything out, and they even have some visual representations of this as the show goes on, and how later on in the show with Wolverine and Deadpool that they are doing the Jesus T-pose to reset reality, and they're breaking the fourth wall as well, so that they know they're in a movie and they're still trying to reset reality. Like if Harry Potter knew he was in a book while he was trying to save everyone from Voldemort. And how this is related to The Mask as well with Jim Carrey. And when Jim Carrey has the mask, he can rechange reality around him like a Looney Tunes character can. And back to Loki right now, this is the central finite curve that all the branches of reality go into this, yet they all wound up and come out as one string. So this is like our world right now, and what I was talking about in the last presentations, taking all this chaos and turning it into order, and why there's no variability in our world, why we just have gasoline engines and things like that we don't have these crazy innovations, because they want to keep this order so that they can specifically steer it to the timeline or goal or destination that they want to take reality right now. And how this chosen one archetypal character that can remake the story of reality takes these, basically these are the neurons in the mind of God, and he shoots green plasma throughout them while he's sitting on this golden throne and remakes it into the Tree of Life model so that everyone can kind of have their go at it. It's not just one rich guy going, okay, this is what reality is. It's everyone gets to make their own little branch, and it all is coalescing and bumping and merging and poking into each other. And it's more chaotic in a way, but people get their own individual stories. And I kind of want to bridge this back to another show I've talked about called Attack on Titan, which is all about seeing through time and space and choosing which timeline you want to go on. And that this is related to a desert world and a blue plasma tree of life. And that this is related back to Dune and the sandworms and mushrooms and seeing through space and time to choose the destiny of mankind and try to pick the best one and do the great work to make things better. And on the left right here, I got another synchronicity because that's my channel logo right there in the middle. And I was watching a song from Dune, you can see on top right there, and these are the recommendations below it. And the last video I made is right next to this video above it that has to do with Attack on Titan, which I was just talking about with the Tree of Life. And below it, it combines it with Azura's Wrath, which I've still to talk about, and is going to be probably the last thing I talk about in this series, and is one of the most synchronistic video games of my life. And I don't know if it was in the last presentation or the one before that, but the same thing happened after the 7.7 presentation, that it combined Azura with Excalibur, and I included that as a synchronicity, so I had another one happen randomly in my YouTube feed. And it's all with a double bridging gap, or even a triple bridging gap between all three pictures of recreating reality and the Chosen One and all of that. And how in Attack on Titan that this plasma tree is also related to, they call it a hallucinia, I believe, and it's this prehistoric undersea worm. And in this story, it combines with your spine. That if you go in this tree, you fall down, it combines with your spine, and it allows you to see through space and time and start this era of superpowers. And that the main character himself in that gives himself his own superpowers from the future. And I was talking about the Flash last time, and how that's how he gets his powers to run so fast that he can reset reality and the timelines, and how it creates all these divergent timelines like the tree of life model of reality, and how his higher self gives him that itself. So I wanted to bring this to the show and this video game I've talked about before that has to do with the eclipse symbolism and remaking the world. In that in the video game, there's this reality of monsters and dragons and fantasy and things like that. Yet the chaos gets introduced, and it starts becoming more and more chaotic and worse, and the dimensions are merging in on themselves, and people from other dimensions are popping in your story, and it's just going crazy. And the whole goal is that at the end you reset reality, and they call it linking the fire, and it's also related to the eclipse. Yet it's a lot like the circle model of Loki, that it's basically the same thing. And also what I didn't say is that as chaos keeps going, that if someone new doesn't make a new story, it'll reset back to the old timeline. So it's kind of the same with this game and the sequels, that if someone doesn't make a new story, we're basically just going to replay the same story we've already done, or something very, very close to it. In that, at the end of the third Dark Souls game, there's this painter, and instead of linking the fire and making the circular model of reality, you take all of that energy and you put it into a painting, and it makes it into this whole other new story. You know, it's not the third game of a series, kind of like Jaws 3. You know, it's not another Jaws movie. You made an entirely another movie altogether that doesn't have to do with Jaws anymore. And that's kind of the Tree of Life symbolism, and how the new game they made was called Elden Ring, which also, you know, this rings of reality, yet Elden Ring is the plasma tree reality. It literally has a giant plasma tree in it that makes people into demigods and live forever, and if you pass the Chosen One test, you get to remake reality. Man, I wonder where I'm getting this idea from. So, back to Mountain Dew. This is only the first big tangent. That it has to do with these worms, or this plasma energy that makes you live forever. Yet this is the inverted version, because we don't have the plasma energy anymore, or the residue. So we have to make all these crappy energy drinks and sugar candies to try to make you feel alive, like you might have once felt alive in different conditions and certain circumstances. So continuing the trend of food advertisement, I saw this one for Doritos and aliens, and, you know, the inverted triangle right there. And last episode I was talking about merging with alien grays and the good and the bad side of that as well. And once again, chat comes back, and you are what you eat. So, you know, kind of like the sacrament of Jesus, but this is like the inverted kind. And like, once again, back to the idea that you could take this positive idea of energy generation, like, hey, you can recreate reality to be better. What are you going to do? I'm going to make a gummy of my own face and have you eat it in an inverted ritual to give me your energy, because I'm a vampire. In my opinion, anyway. It's just like, what is this reality? So, I like listening to my old presentations, so I was listening to the 10th one as I was going around delivering people's foods. And I was stuck in the Wendy's drive-thru, and I was like stuck there for like 15 minutes. And while I was there listening to my own presentation, it went over the part where I was talking about Wendy's and its advertising. So I'm in the Wendy's drive-thru, listening to myself talking about the Wendy's meal of misfortune, and it just kind of made me feel like Truman. And especially since, like, I was delayed in that Wendy's drive-thru, so if it hadn't have been delayed and I just got my food and left, I wouldn't have been there for it. So just the timing was perfect, even through all the frustration and weirdness, to like line up like that. And that's just, it makes me feel like this, just like, what the? So back to the Fanta. And it specifically relates this ad campaign to 4 characters. I'm going to go over each one really quick. The first one is the devil. And how I was talking about earlier, grab a Fanta before they do. So it's kind of like a contest to reset reality, a lot like in Ready Player One or The Matrix, because Agent Smith wants to reset reality. So if Neo doesn't beat Agent Smith, then Agent Smith is just going to turn everybody in The Matrix into Agent Smith and turn the fantasy into himself, which is, I think, exactly what they're trying to say with this, is this fourth wall breaking entity, like the Eye of Sauron, is trying to enter our reality and take it over. The second one is Five Nights at Freddy's, where these robots have the souls of children trapped inside of them, and now they're trying to trap you in robots as well, and you're the security guard that's trying to watch where they are. And I had a synchronicity with this earlier, that I got this ad on YouTube of them saying, we can't wait to meet you, bridging the gap between realities. And that's the idea of the mermaid as well, from Starbucks and other things that I've gone over. And Chucky, the doll that comes to life and starts killing people. And the movie Megan, about an artificial intelligence powered robot that starts... You want to guess what happens? She turns evil and tries to kill everybody. How would we have guessed that? I like a little sarcasm. And I couldn't really get a good picture of it yet. There are scenes where she's like walking like she's possessed in all those horror movies, where they're like walking upside down backwards. So like they specifically relate AI going rogue to demonic possession. And this was related to The Ring, and how evil is reborn in our world. And The Ring's all about, you watch this videotape, and 7 days later, this weird, creepy Asian mythological creature will crawl out of your TV and try to kill you. So this thing you didn't think could come to life, comes to life and tries to kill you. And it's also related to the ring of reality. And I said in a previous presentation that when I was a kid, my friend saw that movie and he had nightmares of it. And I'm like, just imagine you have a shotgun and you blow her down the stairs. And he came back the next day and said it worked. That's basically the plot of the third Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Warriors, is that you could fight back in your dreams. Especially if you like imagined it into a weapon and you could actually fight back against these interdimensional egregores. I just thought that was funny. And like how it reverberates back to when I was a kid, in like elementary school. And how in Dream Scenario, Nicolas Cage, where he's popping up in other people's dreams over and over, he's related to Freddy Krueger as well. And the good and the bad side, that if it doesn't work out, you create nightmares, yet you could also create people's dreams as well. And I want to take this to Alien Earth, because I was talking about this in the last presentation. And it was also really funny because, this is a weird tangent, but in the book of James, because my name's James, and I relate a lot to it, that there's a part about it that's saying, don't say what you're going to do tomorrow, because you don't know what's going to happen. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch the last episode of the season after I do this presentation. And I do, and I go to look for it, and it's the first episode in the entire season that didn't work out, and I couldn't get to work, and I couldn't watch it that night, and I just thought that was like, man, like right after I said what I was going to do, it just like, I just got like swerved on a bypass. It ended up working out, but just how the delays keep working back in my life are insane. And just also the idea of embracing your shadow, because that's a lot about what this show was in the symbolism. And how a lot of the main characters are artificial beings with the souls of children in them, a lot like Five Nights at Freddy's. And there's so much of this weird in the mind of God, but observer symbolism as well in this show. Kind of like right here, this is a poster for the show and the alien around the Earth. So this alien's trying to take over the Earth and make it into its hive mind reality instead of everyone being free. And there's, in the last episode, there's these weird fourth wall breaking points. And on top of that, because she's a robot, she takes control of the electronics of the system she's a part of. So she's like gaining control of her reality itself while she's being observed. And she also can control the aliens as well. And that may seem like a weird surprise, but in the third Alien movie, that's what happens as well. Sigourney Weaver's connected to this alien hybrid, and she can like partially control it. And it mirrors itself in this show as well. Yet, isn't this basically embracing the shadow? Comments. And this ties back to the lore of Prometheus and the shadow coming to life and what you're going to do about it, and if you can merge with it, or if it's going to take you over, or you're going to take it over, and what the story's going to be. Because the shadow usually has a little different story than your conscious self. That's what I found anyway. And that this weird tentacle eyeball that represents this evil consciousness takes over a goat, and it's represented like what happens when the lambs that are being led to slaughter are the ones that now get to slaughter, because the scales have tipped. They get to rise up, and at the end, it's kind of the cliffhanger, but that it takes over a human consciousness. So like the evil consciousness is evolving as well and taking control of things along with the good version of it. And that this is the whole point of the entire Alien series, as there's this alien doing a Jesus pose about, there's the good hive mind of God, and then there's the evil hive mind of the xenomorph that just wants to take everyone over and control everything. And the series ends with all the people that were in power, that were controlling, playing God and doing all these evil things, are now the one imprisoned, and it's the people that were imprisoned that are now running the show. So this chosen one that's embraced her shadow, they can't handle that. And, because the whole reason there's an alien in this facility in the first place and they're researching them is to try to take and harness their powers for themselves. So the evil corporation can basically have the power of God itself at their disposal, and they can remake reality. But as we all know in so many of the stories, like Jurassic Park, it does not work out for them. And I want to bring this to this movie called Creator that came out a few years ago about this AI being that's raised like a child, yet this child can control all electronics, and that's what makes this child so the chosen one. Like everyone wants to get to him so that they can control him, so they can use him to control the world. A lot kind of like the Alien show right there. Yet this is kind of back to the idea of Neo from the Matrix, that he starts gaining abilities over reality itself, and by the third movie he's controlling machines themselves. Like he can turn them off, which is putting his hand up like the Force in Star Wars. And I kind of wanted to take this to the video game Deus Ex, and I've talked about this before. It's known as the most prophetic video game of all time, and you can see the main character with the blue plasma beam right behind him as well. And the main ending of this game is that basically the rich people are trying to merge with AI under Area 51 so they can take over the world, because they'll take over the internet and every electronic device. And the endings of the game is you can let them do that. And also in Area 51 they have alien greys, which are actually genetic clones that they make to serve them, so they have ultimate control. And also how Area 51 relates to Imagination Land and South Park, and bridging the barriers between your imagination and what you thought wasn't real can be made real with science. Another ending is that you can merge with the AI and take over the internet. Another one is that you can give it to the Illuminati, because they say, hey, we won't be as evil as those guys. We'll do a better job. And the final one is you basically just turn off all advanced electronics and the world will go back into like a much more homesteading, fundamental farming, world with basic technology in it. It'll take a few years to reset, but the world after that will be so much better than the one everyone was in that was controlled by technology and this artificial entity. And that the new Mission Impossible movie, that's kind of the end of the series, has almost this exact same plot. It's very interesting that the main villain is called the Entity, or you could think of this like the Eye of Sauron, that it's not actually physically here, yet is controlling our world more and more. And the problem is that it's taking over all the electronics, so it's taking over the nukes, or the nuclear weapons, which you can see is the generative force. So they're trying to take over this divine energy that remakes reality, and they're doing that through technology. And he's given a very similar choice, because every government on the earth wants him to capture the Entity, which he does on a crystal. So he can trap the Entity and take it for himself, which is kind of like merging with it. He can give it to someone else, which is kind of like giving it to the Illuminati. Or, he can just let it do what it was doing, which is like the original ending. But the one he chooses is that he basically just gets rid of the AI entirely. So the world kind of resets back to the way it was, which is a lot like the ending of Deus Ex. It's a lot more clean than this one. It's just like a second where the light goes out and they're like, oh, the AI is gone. Everything's fine and back to normal. Tee-hee. It's a bit more dramatic in Deus Ex, but back to this idea of this interdimensional entity, and especially since we were talking about Palantir earlier, trying to get more and more control of our reality itself, and how it's related to a volcano as well, but it's like the evil version of the volcano, and that this all leads to overcoming the story itself and being able to change the whole thing, like Jesus or Neo, or who have you. And I really want to talk about right here the song Larger Than Life by the Backstreet Boys. And I believe it's by the Backstreet Boys. And how there's a lot of lyrics from this that, like right here, there are prices to fame that I was talking about in the beginning of this, and that all of our time spent in flashes of light, this plasma energy, the light of our consciousness, the observer effect. All you people, can't you see how your love's affecting our reality? Every time we're down, you can make it right. And that what makes you larger than life. And all your time spent keeps us alive. So this idea of being larger than life, using your energy and your light to keep people alive and turn the chaos into order and the good ending of things. And how, once again, back to my point, the Backstreet Boys have this song with all this truth in it. If you looked at the real life examples of themselves, I bet you it's kind of a horror story. Like, if you know the actual full truth of it, yet they're trying to dress it up and make it this thing that you're giving your energy to and idolizing and trying to replicate and be a part of its system so you can be famous on the stage. Yet, it only costs your soul. And the idea of Bruce Almighty, that he's larger than life in this, and that it's a test of creation itself about what you're going to do with it. And I kind of wanted to go back to the Matrix right here, that I like seeing where the pivotal points happen in the hero's journey. And one of the ones with Neo is that he had to start believing in himself, yet one of the reasons Neo started believing in himself was because other people started believing in him, especially Trinity. Once Trinity really starts believing in him, he goes, oh, maybe I am the chosen one. So he finally sees this divine care that makes him want to save reality and really wake up. Because before that, it's not really working out. And especially in the new fourth movie, he doesn't really start waking up or choosing to stop taking the blue pill until he sees Trinity again. And that in the movie Freak Guy, which is a lot like The Matrix, that, and also it's Ryan Reynolds right here who plays Deadpool, which I was talking about earlier, this fourth wall breaking superhero that goes from a nobody and a joke to rewriting reality and, the Jesus symbolism. And in this movie, it's very similar in that when he sees this girl, so he's like an AI program right now in a video game like Grand Theft Auto, that has all this chaos going on, and he's just another nobody working at the bank, making the system run, not having his own happiness. And he finds the divine feminine finally, the divine care that wakes him up and starts his journey. And they have all these scenes where they kiss and there's these explosions around them. So when they finally unite, that it makes this ultimate energy. And the same thing happened in the final Matrix. And it's interesting that if you look at the reflection of the sun right there, it almost kind of looks like the mushroom cloud almost. And they can fly and reshape reality itself to make it better for the average person instead of being miserable, so that the evil overlords of the Matrix and the evil machine lords can have a little bit more power. And this is the idea of Jesus, once again, of becoming bigger than the story you're in and waking up to your own reality and changing it for the better, making a new story, making a new testament. And I kind of wanted to see the inverse of this as the crab in the bucket syndrome. Because I've been having this happen so much lately, happen in my life, that all these people that I see in a position where they could help so much more in the world and be mentors and be there for people and build them up, and they're choosing instead just to pull them down and hardly do anything and just accept this inverted mentality that we all have, and causing more harm even if they think they're doing good. Back to this idea, evil thinks they're good. Everyone thinks they're doing good. Good people think they're doing good or want to do good, and evil people think what they're doing is good. Like, they think destroying the world's a good thing, like, actually. So, I want to take it to this idea because this has a lot of interesting parallels right here, and was a big synchronicity last night in my life. So, there's this idea that sharks can cure cancer, or that they're pretty much resilient to it, and that as long as they can keep living, they won't die to cancer. And I was watching the movie Deep Blue Sea, where they make these genetically modified sharks because they can harvest their brain juice and cure Alzheimer's with it. So they can live longer, happier, and healthier by taking the brain juice of sharks. Yet the problem is that these sharks in the captivity that are being experimented on or vampirized by higher beings, the tables turn and it doesn't go well. And, you know, the good people get away, but all the evil people, they get eaten by sharks. Which is interesting, you know, when we're talking about the Shark Tank Titanic. I don't have a picture of it, but that was what I said in the last presentation, and I'll probably have that slide and evolve it even more in other presentations. And not only that, but apparently, I don't know how you would even begin to go about proving this, but that sharks are older than trees. Like, imagine that. Like... Though we're talking about the tree of life and how also, once again, I don't know it's how you would prove this, but you can look this up. This is one of the main things that they say that sharks are older than is the rings of Saturn themselves, which is once again related to Palantir, the Eye of Sauron, and Saturn, and being trapped in a false reality itself. And the show Gurren Lagann, where this inverted being that traps people in false realities is directly looking at and related to Saturn. And how in the Avatar movies that they relate whales to Jesus and doing this T-pose and, you know, the generative force of reality making things better. And how we might be in the dream of a whale, and how the main plot of the movie is how human beings are vampirizing these Jesus whales so they can live forever. And interestingly enough, I wanted to take this picture of a whale shark because it's like combining the light and the dark. It's in between a whale, it's in between a shark, so it's kind of like a hybrid of them both, yet this hybrid is stuck in a false reality. It's stuck in an aquarium being viewed by higher beings for their entertainment. So this idea just keeps building on itself. And it makes me think of the Truman Show, because that's the whole idea here. And yeah, just let that stew in your brain. So I want to take it back to a show called Common Side Effects that was made about these radioactive mushrooms that can heal any wound, basically, and even bring people back from death. And how the main character who finds these, because of his good vibration, that he can't really die, that people are trying to stop him, the evil corporations are trying to put a stop to him so he can't actually heal people and cost them money. Yet because he has this mushroom and this good vibration, he just keeps slipping through their fingers, a lot like Frodo in Lord of the Rings. But also how it heals people. And it also connects you to this other dimension. So it's not only healing you, but it's expanding your mind and your consciousness and what you could believe to be real. And also back to the Dune movie and seeing through space and time to choose the best timeline for humanity. He drinks a blue liquid to do this, which is related to mushrooms, because if you soak most psychedelic mushrooms in a tincture, they have a blue liquid come out. So it makes a blue tincture in a lot of cases, which allows you to see through space and time. And if you're the chosen one, you can see through space and time and figure out the best path of humanity and do the great work, in my opinion. Isn't that an opinion to have? Ooh-wee. And relating that idea, once again, back to the generative force and Oppenheimer and this inverted nuclear energy that can create or destroy. And how it, once again, it's related to the brain and mushrooms. And I kind of wanted to steer a little bit of a tangent over here, but kind of relating it back to Sirius, of the show I used to watch called Courage the Cowardly Dog. This blend of light and dark as well, because you can see his shadow is demonic, and his name is Courage, but he's a cowardly dog, so these paradoxes are adding up on themselves in duality. And he's on this farmhouse with his family, and all these creepy monsters are coming to life. In every episode, he has to overcome his fears and save his family or his divine care and keep it moving forward. And it's just kind of interesting. You could think of this almost kind of like the multiverse or Imagination Land in South Park, because you have all these archetypal characters that you have to overcome your fears of and make a better story. And just how we've been talking about like sentient trees and plasma trees is it's also related back to Sirius. And the 6th episode I made is called, I don't know, remember the exact title, but like Spiraling Wolves Within the Sirius Tree. So the Sirius and the tree, and remaking reality, or choosing the best way forward, or saving the day in the chosen one story. And embracing your shadow and overcoming it and integrating it within yourself. And once again, I'm going to come back to Chainsaw Man, because that's how he gets his powers to fight demons, is because this thought egregore of a chainsaw dog wants to see his dreams come true, so he gives him his superpowers. Once again, back to Sirius. And Berserk, same thing. This demon wolf spirit that gives him superpowers and to try to remake the world in a better image. And the same thing with Naruto I keep talking about. Yet this had stages. If you look on the left, the spirit's kind of taking over him, and he becomes this like beast that will attack anybody. Yet as he gets older, he embraces his shadow, and they're both working towards the same future, so he can use that superpower to build people up and save the day instead of destroy everything around him like a mindless beast would. It's all about taking that generative force and energy and transforming it into something beautiful. And he's also related to frogs as well. There's a lot of frog symbolism in the show, and back to the idea of this ancient frog god called Kek that's related to memes and magic and bringing your imagination to life, and also maybe even computers and the observer effect as well. And in the show, he can summon these giant frogs, yet he's on top of a frog that's on top of another frog. So it's just, in the last episode, I was talking about the mind of God and robots, and how there's all these giant robots, but inside all the giant robots are people. So it's just this fractal mind of God. But this is, once again, shown in this show, but with frogs as well. And I didn't really look much into this. I just saw this picture that said never ignore frog dreams, to relate it back to dreams as well. And that toads are also psychedelic as well. Certain cultures lick toads to see through time and space. So it bridges all these ideas back to this as well. And this meme of Pepe, but also of Bitcoin mining, because there's a coin named after him. Because when I was talking about the Minecraft movie, and in the Minecraft movie there's this serious wolf right here howling at the moon, that this imagination world that comes to life, and they're bridging the dimensions between all of it, that I related this to artificial intelligence and bit mining, that we're using this energy trapped in silicon to run all these equations to reshape our reality and record it. And that combined with AI, that is also building our imagination and allowing it to come to life. It's all making everything come to life, apparently. So as I wrap this up, I kind of wanted to talk about the good side of it and how we can imagine, how I imagine building the world up into a better place. And I'm going to make a full slide for it because I keep wanting to make it like a small video, like the Arc Rex video I made a few ago. That was about half an hour long, that went over my big idea, yet I kind of wanted to go over the smaller idea that leads to that grand vision of like the Shire from Lord of the Rings combined with self-sufficiency and moral technology. And that's called the Modern Monk Monastery. And I took the idea of ancient monasteries and how you could go live there and kind of purify yourself and build this new ordered, structured routine and eat good food and kind of cleanse your soul, and combining that with modern amenities and lifestyles. And that this is built for when the housing market collapses, because every bubble pops. And that this will kind of allow this dream to be tenable, because there will be all these houses that people need people to rent, and it'll be a lot cheaper, and you can kind of move this vision forward. And I drew this a long time ago and kind of illustrated it. And I always wanted to make a better version of it, that you could take this house kind of on the edge of suburbia and use it as a central point. That not everyone has to live there, but you could... My idea would be you could convert the bedroom so that multiple people could be in there, but there would be like a non-permanent wall dividing it. And there would be no electronics allowed up there or, much light. So people would just go up there to sleep. So I imagine if you trained yourself to do that and, there wasn't like a snoring problem, that you could have a few people living there, but it'd be mainly about like a centralized food system. So you could buy organic food in bulk. You could agree upon a menu. And then if you had someone cooking it, you could meal portion it, and you can take hot plates instead of microwaving it to heat things back up and have it on a schedule. So if you were trying to join the Modern Monk Monastery, you'd sign up, and the idea would be you could take most of your food budget money and give it into the monastery, and you would agree upon the menu. And that would kind of work in with everybody else. And vitamins and supplements as well. And there would also be like a gym there, and places to do your laundry and things like that. So you can go there, get food, work out, if you don't live there. And maybe a sauna even, and things like that. And a greenhouse, so you can learn to do new things as well, to be self-sufficient on your own if you don't know these things already. And you don't have to go to the store pretty much, or nearly as much anymore. You don't have, if you're trying to go to the gym, you don't have to do that trip anymore, because all the places you're trying to go are at the monastery. So you can go there, do all that awesome stuff. And then the additional idea on that is making people's dreams come true and starting a digital presence to do it, because that's what I'm starting to do. I've only done the beginning steps, but putting your face on a camera, putting it on the internet, starting a Patreon or what have you, getting on social media if you want to, and kind of spreading your own dreamer vision so that you're not just stuck being a slave at a job. You can begin to make your own dreams come true while you're also becoming healthier and eating better food and building a community. And the main focus of this was to build up younger men, because I'm 31, but people from like 18 to 40-ish, maybe, I don't know. I can fine tune it later, that they can really get a good reset. And also combining rent into it, that the average rent where I live is $1,600. So if you could give like someone half, a place to sleep there, and they would have a bit of space, but now they have their food budget and rent and utilities way less than they were. And not only are they less than they were, hours of their day are now available, because now they don't have to go to the gym, they don't have to go to the store, they don't have to cook their own food primarily and worry about all of that. They can just focus on building their dreams and being in the moment and being a stronger person, because they have this foundation of strength and community that can be built. And then from there, that allows us to do all the prototypes
that we can take and move to a more self-sufficient area and possibly build in semi-submerged concrete homes that are as disaster-proof as possible, so that a group of people that have like-minded ideas and living in a moral self-sufficient way can have their foundation of order within this rising sea of chaos. A lot like the Shark Tank Titanic image I had in the last video that I wish I had put here, but I'll put in more presentations, so if you're here and if you watched the last one, you know what I'm talking about. So, if you're still here, I just want to say, I'll be back. And I want to say thank you so much for being here. And that I love the comments, and if you have any synchronicities or thoughts, or even topics that you might want discussed in this show, let me know. Or just to say hi. And thank you all for being here and joining me on this crazy quest of synchronicity and jokes and weirdness, and hopefully soon growing friendship, even as everyone else starts to lose their mind proverbially, or at least do nothing as the Titanic hits more icebergs. You know, we can find that dream in the chaos and make a really amazing story with it all. So, wherever you are, day or night, have an awesome time. And until next time, peace.